In a large, quiet house at the edge of the city, there lived a young boy who had never seen the world with his own eyes. The sunlight, the colors, the faces, everything was a mystery to him. He had never known the simple joy of watching the leaves dance in the wind or the way the clouds changed shape across the sky. But even though he could not see, he was deeply aware of everything around him. He noticed the smallest sounds, the gentlest movements, and he felt the world through touch and sound more than anyone else in the house. His father was a wealthy man, serious and careful, always making sure that the boy had everything he could possibly need. The house was full of servants and busy with people who moved quickly to keep everything perfect. There were lessons, tutors, and a schedule that left almost no free time. Yet, despite all the wealth, the boy sometimes felt lonely. He could not go outside by himself, and most people treated him gently, almost too gently, like he was fragile. They gave him what they needed, but no one really spoke to him like they believed in his abilities or saw him as a person with dreams. Among the many people in the house was a maid who worked quietly, moving from room to room, keeping everything clean and organized. She did not have a high position in the house, and most people barely noticed her. But she had a secret that made her different from everyone else. She loved music more than anything in the world. She had learned to play the piano when she was young, hiding her lessons from those who thought girls from poor families should not waste time on art. Music was her companion in the nights when the house was quiet and the world outside seemed too harsh. One day, while cleaning the study, she noticed the boy sitting by the window, listening to the sounds of the city. He was humming softly, trying to copy the rhythm of a song he had heard someone play long ago. She paused for a moment, captivated by his sense of rhythm. Something inside her told her that he could do more than just hum. He had a natural feeling for music, something that was rare and precious. She started visiting him secretly during small breaks in her work. At first, she would sit quietly and let him talk about what he heard and felt. She never revealed that she could play the piano. She wanted to understand him first, to see how he experienced the world. The boy was curious about the world in ways that others had not noticed. He could describe the difference between the sound of a bird flying nearby and one far away. He could tell when a carriage moved down the street and when a cat walked across the floor. She began to see that he had a special way of listening, a gift that could be transformed into something beautiful. After some days, she decided to take a small risk. She led him to the piano that sat in the corner of the study, covered with a cloth, almost forgotten. She told him that she could help him learn music, that she could guide his hands to produce sounds that would match the melodies in his mind. The boy was hesitant at first. He had never touched a piano before. The thought of pressing the keys and making mistakes frightened him. But there was a warmth in her voice, a gentle patience that made him trust her. The first few lessons were slow and careful. She guided his fingers over the keys, teaching him to feel the vibrations, to understand how each note sounded different. He laughed when he discovered that pressing certain keys produced sharp, lively sounds, and he frowned when others made low, quiet notes. Each time he played a small tune, her heart swelled with pride. She could see the joy in his face, even though he could not see her. The excitement in his voice was enough. No one in the house knew about these lessons. The father had always been strict about schedules and rules, believing that the boy should focus only on traditional education. Music, while valued, was never a priority for him. The maid feared what might happen if anyone discovered her secret. She worried about punishment, but she also felt that the boy's talent was worth the risk. Each day, she waited until the house was quiet, then sneaked into the study with him. The small moments of music became their secret world, a place where the boy could express himself freely and the maid could share her passion. As the weeks passed, the boy's skill grew. He could play simple songs by ear, reproducing melodies he heard in the streets or humming quietly in his mind. The maid introduced him to new tunes, teaching him rhythm and helping him understand the emotion behind the music. They laughed together when mistakes were made, and she celebrated his small victories, always encouraging him. He started to look forward to their secret sessions more than anything else, and it became clear that he had a rare gift that was emerging with each lesson. One afternoon, as she was leaving after a lesson, The boy asked a question that surprised her. "Why do you help me?" he said softly. "You don't have to, and no one else would care." She paused, thinking of all the times she had wanted to encourage someone who had potential but never had the chance. "Because I believe in you," she replied. "I believe you can do wonderful things if you try, and music will help you see the world in a different way, even if you can't see it with your eyes." The boy smiled, a small, genuine smile that lit up his face. It was one of the few moments when he felt truly understood. For the first time, he felt like someone had faith in him, someone who could see past his blindness and recognize the talent and heart inside him. Outside, the city continued its noise and chaos, but inside the quiet study, the music grew stronger. They spent hours experimenting with notes, creating small songs that were uniquely theirs. The maid discovered that teaching him was teaching herself too. She remembered why she loved music, why it had always been a comfort, and she felt her own spirit lifted by his curiosity and determination. One day, while playing a more complicated piece, the boy stopped and listened closely. "It sounds like the rain," he whispered. The maid was amazed. He could capture the feeling of nature in his playing, even without seeing it. She realized that his blindness was not a weakness. It was giving him a different perspective, a sensitivity that allowed him to translate the world into music in a way few could. But their secret world could not remain hidden forever. The father, though busy, occasionally walked past the study and noticed the faint sounds of the piano. He paused once or twice, curious, but did not enter. The maid felt the tension growing each day. What would happen if he discovered the lessons? She worried about disappointing him or being forced to stop. But the thought of taking away the joy and growth she had seen in the boy was unbearable. For now, the secret remained safe. The boy continued to flourish under her guidance, and the maid found a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that small acts of courage, small risks taken to nurture talent, could change a life completely. Each note played, each song learned, was a step toward a future that neither of them could yet imagine. And even in the quiet, still moments of the large house, a bond was forming that would shape them both forever. The boy was no longer just a child in a wealthy home. He was a young musician in the making. And the maid, who had once thought of herself as only a servant, was now his guide, his teacher, and his friend. Together, they created something beautiful that went beyond the rules of the house, beyond the expectations of the world outside. In those hidden lessons, the boy found a voice he never knew he had, and the maid found a reason to believe in hope and talent again. As the day ended, and the last light of the sun fell through the windows, they shared a quiet moment by the piano. The boy placed his hands on the keys, feeling the smooth surfaces, and began to play a small melody. It was imperfect, but it was full of life and emotion. The maid listened, her heart swelling with pride. She knew this was only the beginning, and deep down, she hoped that one day, the whole world would hear the music that had been quietly growing in the corners of the house. For now, it was their secret, a hidden treasure that connected them in ways words could never express. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. The boy had begun to look forward to the quiet afternoons when the house seemed still, and the maid would appear at the study door, smiling softly. Each time she came, he could feel the excitement building inside him, a mixture of curiosity and joy that made the hours of waiting feel long. She never rushed him, never pushed him beyond his comfort, but always encouraged him to try new sounds, to explore the piano as if it were a world waiting to be discovered. Their lessons grew more structured without losing the sense of wonder. She taught him to identify different notes by their tone, to feel the rhythm by tapping with his fingers, and to understand how each key could express something different. The boy's fingers, once unsure and hesitant, became more confident, moving across the keys with curiosity and care. Sometimes he would stumble, hitting the wrong note, but she would laugh gently, saying, "Even mistakes have their own music. Listen closely. There is something beautiful in every sound." It was during one of these lessons that the boy began to understand something deeper. Music was not just a collection of notes. It was a language that could express feelings he could not put into words. Joy, sadness, excitement, and fear could all be communicated through the melodies he played. For the first time, he felt that he could share what was inside him, not by speaking, but through the piano. And the maid, who had once only dreamed of teaching someone who truly listened, realized that she was witnessing a gift unfold before her eyes. The boy's sense of hearing became sharper. He could distinguish the faintest differences between notes, recognize the subtle changes in rhythm, and sense the emotion in each melody. He began to experiment on his own, improvising tunes that surprised even the maid. She listened intently, smiling as he found ways to express himself that she had not taught. It was as if the piano had become an extension of his spirit, allowing him to explore the world beyond the walls of the house. But there were challenges. The household was busy and noisy, and finding the right moments for lessons required careful planning. The maid had to move quickly, hiding her presence and making sure no one noticed. Sometimes she would hear footsteps approaching and freeze, listening as the sounds faded, her heart racing with relief. The boy, despite his blindness, could sense her anxiety, and he would reassure her with a simple touch on the hand or a quiet word, showing that he understood the risks and valued the lessons more than anything. One afternoon, the boy shared a story from the city outside. He described the sound of the market, the laughter of children playing, and the soft patter of rain on the rooftops. The maid listened closely and encouraged him to translate those sounds into music. Together, they began to create small compositions inspired by the world he could hear. She guided him through the process, showing him how to capture rhythm, mood, and energy in each note. It was challenging, but the boy was determined, and his natural sensitivity made the music come alive. As the lessons progressed, their bond grew stronger. The maid learned more about the boy's personality, his fears, his dreams, and his quiet determination. He learned to trust her, not just as a teacher but as a friend who believed in him. There were moments of laughter when he tried to play fast and ended up in a tangled mess of notes. There were moments of quiet reflection when he would close his eyes and let the music flow through him without thinking. The maid found herself learning from him as well, understanding the power of patience, empathy, and genuine encouragement. Despite their careful secrecy, the boy's progress did not go unnoticed by everyone. Some servants began to whisper about the sound of piano music drifting through the hallways. The boy's improvement was remarkable, and even those who did not know the full story sensed something special. The maid felt a mix of pride and fear. She wanted the boy to flourish, but she also knew the father's strict rules could put an end to the lessons if discovered. One day, the boy asked a question that made the maid pause. "Do you think father would like my music?" he said softly. "Or would he be angry that we practice without telling him?" The maid thought carefully before answering. "I cannot say for certain," she replied. "But what I do know is that your music is something beautiful. It is part of who you are. If we do it quietly and with respect, perhaps one day he will see it the way I do." Her words reassured the boy, and they continued their lessons with renewed focus. He practiced with dedication, exploring new melodies and rhythms. The maid encouraged him to play pieces that told a story, to imagine scenes and emotions, and then express them on the piano. He discovered that he could create joy, sadness, and even suspense through music. Each session became a journey, an adventure into a world that neither of them had fully known before. During one lesson, a sudden storm began outside. Rain pattered on the windows, wind rattled the shutters, and the house groaned with the force of the weather. The boy, instead of feeling afraid, was inspired. He let his fingers dance over the keys, mimicking the rhythm of the storm. The maid listened, amazed at how he could capture the mood of the world outside in his music. It was raw, powerful, and moving. She realized that the boy was not just learning piano. He was learning to interpret the world, to express his inner life through sound. The storm passed, leaving behind a calm that felt almost magical. The boy sat back, breathing heavily, but with a radiant smile on his face. "I feel like I was part of it," he said quietly, "like I was dancing with the rain." The maid nodded, her heart full of pride. She knew that these lessons were more than just music. They were teaching him confidence, imagination, and the ability to connect with the world in ways that sight alone could never provide. As weeks turned into months, the boy's skill continued to grow. He could play longer, more complex pieces, and even began to compose small original melodies. The maid marveled at his dedication and natural talent. She often thought about the future and wondered what might happen if the father discovered the lessons. Would he understand the boy's gift, or would he see it as a distraction? The thought was unsettling, but she focused on the present, enjoying each lesson and the bond they shared. One afternoon, while the boy played a piece he had created himself, the maid heard footsteps approaching. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew the father was nearby. She whispered to the boy to pause and listened, tense and alert. But instead of entering the room, the father's footsteps stopped outside. A voice called softly, "Who is playing?" The boy hesitated, then answered honestly, "It is me, father." The maid's heart raced. She expected anger, a reprimand, or even punishment. But the father's voice was calm. "You are playing very well," he said. "I can hear the care and attention in each note." The maid felt a mixture of relief and surprise. The father did not enter, but his words were enough to let them know that he had noticed. The boy smiled, proud of himself and encouraged by the approval, even if it was quiet and distant. The lesson continued, now with a new awareness that their secret world was becoming a little less hidden. Despite the small revelation, they continued their lessons carefully. The maid guided the boy through more challenging pieces, helping him refine his technique and develop his own style. The boy listened intently, learned quickly, and experimented boldly. Their afternoons were filled with discovery, laughter, and music that seemed to float through the house, touching the walls and the hearts of anyone who might listen. Through it all, the bond between the maid and the boy grew stronger. He trusted her completely, and she cherished her role in his life. She had become more than a teacher. She was a guide, a friend, and someone who had opened a door to a world the boy had never imagined he could enter. Each note played, each melody explored, brought them closer together and strengthened the hidden connection that made their lessons special. The boy began to understand that music was more than just sound. It was a way to communicate, to feel, and to grow. And the maid realized that teaching him had changed her too. She had found purpose, joy, and a sense of fulfillment that she had never experienced before. Together, they had created a small, secret universe where talent and trust flourished, and where the challenges of the outside world seemed less important. As the sun set and the last light faded from the windows, they ended another lesson. The boy placed his hands gently on the keys, feeling the smooth wood beneath his fingers. He played a short melody, soft and sweet, a reflection of the day they had shared. The maid listened, her heart full, knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey that would continue to grow in ways neither of them could yet imagine. And in that quiet, magical moment, they both understood the power of music, the strength of trust, and the beauty of a friendship born from a simple act of courage and care. The boy's skill at the piano continued to grow in ways that surprised everyone in the house, though few could see it clearly. The maid remained patient, guiding him through more complex melodies and encouraging him to experiment with emotions and rhythm. Each session was filled with laughter, concentration, and discovery. Yet, beneath the calm surface of their lessons, the tension of secrecy lingered like a shadow. They both knew that if anyone found out the full truth, their quiet world might be disrupted. One morning, the boy's father entered the study unexpectedly. He had noticed the faint music drifting through the halls more often, and curiosity had finally gotten the better of him. The maid's heart raced as he stepped inside, and the boy froze, unsure of what to say. The piano stood silent, the air heavy with anticipation. The father looked at the boy, then at the maid, and spoke in a calm but firm voice. "I hear you have been playing the piano. Explain yourself." The maid felt her hands tremble, but she knew she had to speak honestly. She took a deep breath and said, "Yes, sir. I have been teaching him in secret. He has a natural gift for music, and I thought it would help him grow, even though you were not aware." The boy's father looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The house seemed to hold its breath. Finally, he asked the boy, "Is this true? Have you been practicing piano lessons without telling me?" The boy nodded, his voice steady but quiet. "Yes, father. I wanted to learn. It makes me happy, and I feel like I can express things I cannot say." There was silence for a moment, and the maid feared the worst. The father, always careful and strict, could have reacted with anger. But instead, he seemed thoughtful, almost as if he were considering something larger than the immediate situation. Finally, he spoke. "I see. I understand why you wanted to learn, and I understand why you were cautious. But keeping it a secret could have been dangerous. Do you realize that?" The maid bowed her head, ashamed. "I did, sir. I only wanted to give him a chance to discover his talent." The boy stepped forward slightly, his hand brushing the piano keys instinctively. "Father, please. Music makes me feel alive. It's like I can touch the world even though I cannot see it. I promise I will continue to learn responsibly." The father's eyes softened as he listened. There was a long pause, and then he said, "Very well. I will allow it, but on my terms. You will continue to practice, but I want to be involved in your lessons. I want to see your progress and ensure that your studies in other areas do not suffer." The maid and the boy exchanged a glance, relief washing over them. The tension that had been building for months seemed to ease, replaced by a sense of cautious hope. The father's decision was unexpected, but it offered a path forward. Music would no longer need to be hidden, though it would now be part of the larger structure of the household. With the father's cautious approval, the lessons became more structured. The maid continued to teach, but now with guidance and oversight. The boy's progress accelerated, his confidence growing with each day. He learned to play more complex pieces and even began experimenting with harmonies and dynamics that he had never attempted before. The maid watched him with pride, knowing that her guidance had helped him discover a talent that would shape his future. The boy's confidence was evident in small ways around the house. He began to speak more openly, to share his ideas and thoughts with those around him. The maid noticed how much happier he seemed, how his laughter was freer and his curiosity more pronounced. Music had given him a voice, a way to communicate his inner world, and the father had finally begun to recognize the depth of his son's abilities. However, challenges remained. The household was still a busy place, and balancing piano lessons with other studies required careful planning. The maid and the boy had to navigate interruptions, duties, and expectations from others who did not fully understand the importance of music in the boy's life. Yet, through all these obstacles, their determination never wavered. The boy's enthusiasm was infectious, and the maid's dedication unwavering. One afternoon, the father decided to sit in on a lesson. The boy's hands hovered over the keys, nerves tingling as he prepared to play. The maid encouraged him softly, reminding him to trust himself and the music. As he began to play, the father listened intently. He noticed the emotion, the precision, and the natural talent that the boy exhibited. He realized that this was not just a hobby or pastime. This was a genuine gift that deserved recognition. When the piece ended, the father did not speak immediately. He let the silence linger, allowing the sound of the final notes to settle in the room. Then he said quietly, "I underestimated you. You have a talent that is remarkable. I am proud, but also aware that it comes with responsibility. You must continue to nurture it carefully." The boy beamed, a mixture of pride and relief evident in his voice. "Thank you, father. I will work hard. I want to make you proud." The maid felt a warmth in her heart, seeing the father's approval and the boy's determination. She knew that the journey was far from over, but this moment marked a turning point. The lessons that had begun in secrecy were now a shared journey, one that involved trust, understanding, and the recognition of talent. As the days passed, the father's interest in the boy's musical development grew. He arranged for additional resources, ensuring that the boy had access to quality instruments and learning materials. He even spoke to professional musicians, seeking advice on how best to support the boy's growth. The maid continued her role as teacher, but now with the added support and acknowledgement that she had long deserved. The household, once a place of strict routine and formality, began to change subtly, accommodating the boy's passion for music. Despite the newfound support, the maid never lost her humility. She remained attentive to the boy's needs, patient with his mistakes, and dedicated to nurturing his talent. She knew that music was not just about technique but about heart, expression, and connection. Each lesson was an opportunity for the boy to explore his emotions and develop a deeper understanding of himself. The boy, too, embraced the new dynamic. He took his father's involvement seriously, appreciating the guidance and the resources provided. Yet, he never lost the joy and spontaneity that had characterized his secret lessons. He experimented with new sounds, created his own compositions, and shared his discoveries with the maid and, gradually, with his father. The bond between teacher and student remained strong, strengthened by the recognition and support from the father. One evening, after a particularly challenging lesson, the boy sat quietly at the piano, reflecting on how far he had come. The maid stood nearby, watching him with pride. She remembered the first time he had touched the keys, uncertain and hesitant, and now he played with confidence, sensitivity, and imagination. The journey had been long and filled with challenges, but the results were extraordinary. The father entered the room silently, listening to the boy play a piece he had composed himself. When the music ended, he approached, a small smile on his face. "You have grown remarkably," he said. "I see now that the risks we took were worth it. Your talent is undeniable, and your dedication is impressive. I am proud of both of you for working together." The maid and the boy shared a glance, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had undertaken together. The lessons that had begun in secrecy had now become a shared experience, a bond that connected them all. Music had not only given the boy a voice but had also transformed the household, bringing understanding, patience, and a sense of shared purpose. As the night settled in, the boy continued to play, exploring new melodies and ideas. The maid listened, offering gentle guidance, and the father stood nearby, witnessing the growth and talent that had flourished before him. It was a moment of triumph, a recognition of the power of patience, courage, and belief in someone's potential. In that quiet study, filled with the soft glow of the lamp and the gentle hum of the piano, the boy, the maid, and the father shared a rare connection. They had faced challenges, navigated secrecy and uncertainty, and emerged stronger for it. The journey was not yet complete, but the foundation had been laid for something extraordinary. The boy's talent, nurtured with care and dedication, would continue to grow, and the lessons learned would shape all their lives in ways they could not yet fully imagine. With the father's cautious support, the atmosphere in the house began to change. The boy's piano lessons were no longer a secret, and he could practice freely under the watchful guidance of the maid. The father, though initially reserved, started showing interest in the boy's musical development. He inquired about the pieces he was learning, asked about his progress, and occasionally listened as the boy played. The boy, who had once played in secrecy, now performed openly, his confidence growing each day. The maid continued to teach with dedication, guiding the boy through more advanced lessons. She introduced him to compositions that were more challenging, helping him understand the subtlety of tempo, expression, and emotion. She encouraged him to experiment with his own melodies, allowing him to explore music beyond the written notes. Each day brought new discoveries, and the boy's skill became more refined. His fingers moved with precision, but his music carried emotion, telling stories that words could never convey. The father observed these lessons quietly at first. He had always been practical and careful, focusing on education and discipline. But seeing the boy play with such passion and joy touched something in him. He realized that music was more than a skill. It was a way for his son to experience the world, to communicate, and to express emotions that he could not articulate otherwise. The father decided to support this gift fully, investing in resources that would enhance the boy's musical education. A new piano was brought into the study, a larger, richer instrument that responded beautifully to the boy's touch. The father arranged for additional tutors, professional musicians who could provide guidance in areas the maid could not. Yet, The maid remained the central figure, the one who understood the boy best, who had nurtured his talent from the very beginning. The boy cherished her guidance, but he also appreciated the father's involvement, sensing a growing bond between them that had not existed before. The boy's confidence grew alongside his skill. He began to play longer, more complex pieces, and his interpretations showed a maturity beyond his years. The maid encouraged him to listen carefully to the nuances of each composition, to feel the story behind the music, and to express it fully. The boy responded with dedication, immersing himself in the piano and discovering the endless possibilities of sound and rhythm. In their lessons, the maid and the boy began to focus on composition. The boy would describe a scene or emotion, and together they would create music that reflected it. Sometimes it was the sound of a bustling street, other times a quiet moment of reflection. The maid guided him, showing how to structure melodies, harmonies, and rhythms to convey the feeling he wanted. The boy's imagination and sensitivity allowed him to create music that was vivid, expressive, and moving. The father noticed the boy's growth not only in skill but in character. He had become more patient, disciplined, and confident. Music had given him a way to channel his emotions, to explore his abilities, and to find joy in expression. The father began to recognize the value of nurturing talent, understanding that it was not enough to provide material comfort. Encouragement, guidance, and belief in a child's potential were equally important. As the boy's skills improved, the maid introduced him to performance. Small gatherings were arranged within the household, allowing him to play for the family and select guests. At first, he was nervous, his hands trembling over the keys, but with the maid's gentle reassurance, he began to play with poise and grace. The audience was captivated by his music, moved by the emotion he conveyed. The boy's father watched with pride, realizing that the talent he had once overlooked was extraordinary. The boy began to understand the impact of his music on others. He saw how his melodies could evoke emotions, bring joy, or even offer comfort. The maid guided him through these experiences, helping him understand the responsibility that came with talent. She emphasized the importance of humility, patience, and the dedication required to continue growing. The boy listened carefully, absorbing her words and applying them to every note he played. One day, the father arranged for a private recital with a respected musician he knew. The boy was nervous but excited, eager to show what he had learned. The maid encouraged him, reminding him of the countless hours of practice, the dedication, and the joy that music had brought into his life. She told him to play with feeling, to let the music speak for him. The boy took a deep breath and began to play. Each note resonated with emotion, capturing the attention and admiration of everyone present. After the recital, the musician approached the boy and the maid, impressed by the boy's skill and interpretation. He offered guidance and advice, suggesting ways to refine his technique and expand his repertoire. The father watched, proud and amazed, realizing that the boy's talent was not only exceptional but also rare. He understood that with continued support, guidance, and practice, his son could achieve remarkable things. The boy continued to practice diligently, exploring new compositions and creating his own music. The maid guided him patiently, always encouraging, never rushing. Their lessons were a balance of structure and creativity, discipline and freedom. The boy thrived in this environment, discovering the depths of his abilities and the power of expression through music. At the same time, the relationship between the father, the maid, and the boy grew stronger. The father began to see the maid not just as a servant, but as a mentor and guide, someone who had shaped his son's talent and character. The maid, in turn, appreciated the father's recognition and support, understanding that his involvement would open doors for the boy's future. The boy felt the love and care from both, realizing that he was supported and believed in. The maid and the boy began to prepare for a larger recital, one that would include members of the community and other musicians. They worked tirelessly, practicing pieces that challenged the boy's skill and expanded his creativity. The father provided encouragement, resources, and reassurance, ensuring that the boy felt confident and prepared. The household became a place of music and learning, a space where talent was nurtured, celebrated, and supported. Through it all, the maid remained a constant presence, guiding, teaching, and encouraging. She celebrated every achievement, no matter how small, and offered comfort during moments of frustration or doubt. The boy trusted her implicitly, knowing that she understood him better than anyone else. Their bond, formed through secret lessons and shared passion, had become unbreakable. The boy's music continued to grow in depth and complexity. He experimented with different styles, explored new emotions, and developed his own voice. The maid guided him through these explorations, helping him refine his technique and understand the impact of his music. The father, observing quietly, recognized that the boy was becoming more than a talented musician. He was developing into a thoughtful, expressive, and confident individual. As the day of the recital approached, excitement and anticipation filled the household. The boy practiced diligently, guided by the maid's patient instruction and the father's supportive presence. Each session was an opportunity to improve, to experiment, and to connect with the music in a deeper way. The boy felt ready, confident in his abilities and the support that surrounded him. Finally, the day of the recital arrived. The boy sat at the piano, his fingers poised over the keys. The maid stood beside him, offering a reassuring smile, and the father watched proudly from the front row. As he began to play, the music flowed effortlessly, carrying emotion, expression, and joy. The audience listened in rapt attention, captivated by the boy's talent and the depth of feeling in his performance. When the last note faded, the room erupted in applause. The boy smiled, his heart full, and the maid felt a sense of pride and fulfillment that she had never experienced before. The father approached, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder, his eyes shining with pride and love. He realized that the journey they had undertaken together had not only nurtured talent, but had also strengthened their bonds and transformed their lives. The recital was a success, marking a milestone in the boy's musical journey. It was a testament to patience, dedication, and the power of belief in one another. The boy's talent had been recognized and celebrated, and the support of the maid and father had been instrumental in his growth. Music had become a bridge between them, a source of joy, expression, and connection. As the evening ended and the guests departed, the boy, the maid, and the father shared a quiet moment in the study. The piano stood silent, a symbol of the journey they had taken together. The boy's hands rested on the keys, feeling the smooth wood, and he reflected on how far he had come. The maid smiled, proud of the progress and the bond they had nurtured. The father, observing quietly, felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had supported and guided his son in discovering his true potential. In the quiet of the house, the music that had once been hidden now resonated openly, a testament to perseverance, trust, and the power of nurturing talent. The boy had grown in skill and confidence. The maid had found purpose and pride, and the father had discovered the importance of belief and support. Together, they had created something extraordinary, a story of talent, courage, and the transformative power of music. And as they looked to the future, they knew that this journey was only the beginning of something truly remarkable. The boy had grown more confident and skilled with each passing day, his fingers dancing across the piano keys with ease and expression. Music had become a part of him, a way to communicate, to feel, and to explore the world beyond what his eyes could see. The maid watched him with pride, remembering the first hesitant notes he had played, and she could not help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. Her guidance had helped him discover his own voice, and the journey they had shared had changed them both forever. The father, too, had grown to appreciate the depth of the boy's talent. He now understood that providing material comfort alone was not enough. Nurturing a child's passion and supporting their growth was just as important. He observed his son's dedication, the care he took with every note, and the joy that music brought into his life. Slowly, he began to see the maid not just as a servant, but as a mentor, someone who had unlocked a world of possibilities for his son and nurtured a gift that might otherwise have remained hidden. The household had changed with the boy's music. Laughter and melodies now echoed through the halls, a constant reminder of the beauty that talent and dedication could bring. Servants and family alike noticed the difference, and there was a quiet respect for the boy's skill and the maid's guidance. The boy was no longer seen as fragile or limited by his blindness. He was recognized as capable, expressive, and remarkable in ways that extended far beyond what anyone had expected. One morning, the father suggested that the boy perform in front of a wider audience. The idea both thrilled and frightened him. He had never played for people outside the household, and the thought of strangers listening made him nervous. The maid reassured him, reminding him of all the practice, all the lessons, and all the moments when he had grown stronger through music. She told him that the audience would not just hear the notes. They would feel the music, and that was what mattered most. The day of the performance arrived, and the boy sat at the piano, his heart beating quickly. The room was filled with people from the community, musicians, and a few close friends. The maid stood beside him, offering a reassuring smile, while the father sat in the front row, pride shining in his eyes. The boy took a deep breath and placed his fingers on the keys, letting the music flow through him. As he played, the audience was captivated. Each note told a story, each melody conveyed emotion, and the music seemed to fill the room with warmth and beauty. The boy's talent shone brightly, and it was clear that he was not just playing notes, but expressing himself fully. The maid watched, her heart swelling with pride, and the father felt a mix of amazement and joy. This performance was more than a recital. It was a celebration of courage, dedication, and the power of nurturing a hidden gift. When the final note faded, the room erupted in applause. The boy smiled, overwhelmed by the appreciation and recognition he had received. The maid gently guided him from the piano, and the father approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have done exceptionally well," he said softly. "I am proud of you." The boy felt a warmth in his heart, knowing that he had not only proven his skill but had also earned the acknowledgement of those he cared about most. The success of the performance opened new opportunities for the boy. Musicians and teachers expressed interest in working with him, offering guidance and advice. The father continued to provide support, arranging lessons and resources that would allow the boy to continue developing his talent. The maid remained his trusted guide, helping him navigate each new challenge and encouraging him to explore his creativity further. In the weeks and months that followed, the boy's music reached more people. He played at small gatherings, in classrooms, and for friends and neighbors who were inspired by his dedication and ability. The maid helped him prepare, ensuring that he remained confident and expressive. The father supported him, attending performances and sharing in the joy of his accomplishments. Music had become a bridge, connecting the boy to the world, and allowing him to touch the hearts of everyone who listened. The boy's relationship with the maid deepened as well. She had been there from the beginning, guiding him patiently and celebrating every success, no matter how small. Their bond was built on trust, care, and shared passion. He knew that she had believed in him when others had doubted, and her encouragement had given him the courage to continue. She had opened the door to a world of possibilities, and he was determined to make the most of it. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, the boy and the maid sat quietly in the study, listening to the piano. The boy's hands rested on the keys, feeling the smooth surfaces and the resonance of the instrument. He turned to the maid and said, "Thank you. You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." The maid smiled, her eyes reflecting the pride and affection she felt. "You had it in you all along," she said softly. "I just helped you see it. Music is your gift, and now it is time for the world to hear it too." The father joined them, his expression thoughtful and proud. "I see now what I was too slow to recognize," he said. "Your talent is extraordinary, and your dedication is inspiring. I am proud not only of what you have achieved but also of the person you have become." The boy felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything he had experienced before. Music had given him a voice, a way to connect, and a sense of purpose. The support and guidance from the maid and the father had shaped him into someone confident, capable, and determined. He realized that talent alone was not enough. Belief, encouragement, and the courage to take risks were equally important. Over time, the boy continued to grow as a musician. He explored new styles, composed original pieces, and shared his music with increasingly larger audiences. The maid remained by his side, guiding him, teaching him, and celebrating each new milestone. The father continued to support him, providing resources, encouragement, and a sense of security that allowed the boy to pursue his passion without fear. Through it all, the household had transformed. Music filled the halls, bringing joy, warmth, and a sense of connection. The boy's talent inspired others, showing that dedication, care, and belief in one another could create extraordinary results. The maid, who had once been an unnoticed presence in the house, was now recognized as a mentor and guide. The father had learned the value of nurturing talent, patience, and encouragement, and the boy had discovered his voice, his purpose, and the limitless possibilities of his gift. In the quiet moments after practice, the boy would often sit at the piano, reflecting on how far he had come. He remembered the days when he first touched the keys, uncertain and hesitant, and he smiled at the journey he had undertaken. The maid would sit nearby, offering gentle guidance and encouragement, and the father would observe, proud of the growth and transformation he had witnessed. The boy's music continued to evolve, reflecting his experiences, emotions, and imagination. Each piece told a story, each performance conveyed feeling, and each lesson with the maid deepened his understanding and skill. The father remained supportive, proud, and involved, recognizing that their combined efforts had created something truly remarkable. The journey that had begun in secrecy, with a maid and a blind boy exploring the world of music together, had blossomed into something extraordinary. It was a story of talent, courage, trust, and the transformative power of guidance and belief. The boy's music had touched hearts, changed lives, and created bonds that would last a lifetime. As the years passed, the boy's talent continued to grow, and he achieved recognition far beyond the household. But he never forgot the maid who had nurtured him, believed in him, and guided him through the early days of discovery. He never forgot the father who had learned to support, encourage, and value the gift of talent. Together, they had created a world where music, care, and belief could transform lives. And in the quiet moments, when the boy played the piano alone, he would remember the journey, the lessons, and the people who had helped him become who he was. He played not just for himself, but for the maid who had opened the door, the father who had supported him, and for the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Music had given him more than notes and melodies. It had given him a life filled with expression, connection, and joy, a legacy that would endure far beyond the walls of the house.